19. Matthew chapter 6, verse 19. Lay not up for yourselves treasures upon earth, where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt, nor thieves break through and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt, and where thieves do not break through nor steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. Last month we started taking a look at this idea of stewardship. And we've taken a look at stewardship with our time, our talent, and last week we started the first part of treasure. Take a look at treasure. Last week we focused on the wallet. And that was a tough one to sit through because it was a tough one for me to preach. It was a tough one for me to learn from. But we talked about stewardship with our wallets and our money and what is tithing and giving and things like this. However, let me assure you that while the Bible teaches that treasure does involve money, let me tell you this, treasure is so much more. Lest we become so focused on the money, we forget that treasure is more. There are things in life that we all treasure on this earth. We're going to take a look at some examples of treasure. When I looked up the word treasure in the dictionary, I read this to you last week as a way of review. The word treasure means this in the dictionary: wealth accumulated, particularly a stock or store of money in reserve. A great quantity of anything collected for future use, something very much valued. I wonder what you treasure today. What do you value today? Do you value family? Do you value friends? Do you value your relationship? Do you value your job? Do you value your status in the community? I'm not saying that you shouldn't value your family and all these things, but this is what a treasure is. We treasure our family. We treasure our friends. We treasure the job, or we treasure the benefits of the job, or we treasure these different things in life. And there are many things that we all treasure, something very much valued, great abundance. So, we find in this definition, and today if I were to focus on one particular part of the definition of treasure, it would be that of something that is very much valued. Alright, something that is very much valued. So treasure is more than money. I want us to take a look at Genesis. We're going to turn to several different passages this morning. Genesis chapter number 22. Genesis chapter number 22. Here is a treasure that we find. Many people hold this dear. And there's nothing wrong with holding dear to things and treasure. You've got to understand that there's nothing wrong with treasuring something. What is wrong is when you treasure something more than you do God. Alright, this is the priority. So, look at Genesis chapter 22. We'll start reading at verse number 1. It says, "And it came to pass after these things that God did tempt Abraham, and said unto him, Abraham, and he said, Behold, here I am. And he said, Take now thy son, thine only son, Isaac, whom thou lovest, and get thee into the land of Moriah, and offer him there for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains, which I will tell thee of." Now, you have to understand that Isaac is a son of promise to Abraham. This son Isaac is the son that God had promised Abraham many years before, saying, "I will give you a son, and of that son I will make you a great nation of this son." And so Abraham had tried several different things. If you remember, he actually went into sin, and therefore you have Ishmael. And Isaac, though, is the only son of promise. That's why it says, "Thy son, thine only son." People say, well, Isaac was not his only son, but he was his only son of promise. Alright, so this is important to notice, that here you have Isaac, a promised son. Now, I value and I treasure every one of my children. Okay? All 5 of them. Alright, tomorrow all 5 of them especially. And I treasure them. There's nothing wrong with treasuring our children. But here, Isaac is a very special child, in particular because God said, "I'm going to make something great of this child." And so, finally the day comes that Abraham, and miracles have taken place after Abraham and his wife Sarah are over the age of being able to have children, and yet God gives them Isaac. And now God turns around and says, "I want you to take your son Isaac, and I want you to offer him as a sacrifice." Now see, we think of Romans chapter 12 where it says, offer yourself as a living sacrifice. God says, I want you to offer him as a burnt sacrifice. That means I want your son to die. Now you have to put yourself just for a second in Abraham's shoes. How would you respond if God said, I want you to put your son, what you treasure the most in this life, what I promised I'd give you, and I want you to put that up as a sacrifice. And I want you to give that up. But God, this is a child that you said I could have. This is something that I have looked forward to. I have longed for. I've been through a lot of trials for this. I've seen a lot of things take place. And now I finally have it. And God, you want me to get rid of it? This is something I value very greatly. And God says, I want you to take your son, whom thou lovest, this treasure, this son, and offer him for a burnt offering, sacrifice. Notice verse number 3. And Abraham rose up early in the morning and saddled his ass and took 2 of his young men with him and Isaac his son and clave the wood for the burnt offering. And rose up and went into the place of which God had told him. Then on the 3rd day, Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place afar off. And Abraham said unto his young men, Abide here, ye with the ass, and I and the lad will go yonder and worship, and come again to you. First of all, you see, while Abraham is about to sacrifice his son, this promised child that he was promised by God, that he treasures so value, and he treasures so much, that he tells his people, we're going to go worship. I'm going to offer up my son. I'm going to worship God. But notice what he says. He says, we're going to go worship and return. So you see here a portion of Abraham's faith. But he says, we're going to go worship and come again to you. And Abraham, verse 6, took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it upon Isaac his son. And he took the fire in his hand and a knife, and they went both of them together. And Isaac spake unto Abraham his father, and said, My father. And he said, Here am I, my son. And he said, Behold the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering? So Isaac is old enough right now to understand, hey, this is something. I know about offering. I know about sacrifice. I know you have to have a lamb. You have to have the altar. So, Dad, we've got the fire. We've got the wood. We've got the knife. We've got all the proper instruments. But God, we're missing something Dad, we're missing something very valuable, very important, and that's the lamb. Where's the lamb at, Dad? Where's the lamb at? Notice verse number 8. And Abraham said, My son, God will provide himself a lamb for a burnt offering. So they went both of them together. And they came to the place which God had told him of. And Abraham built an altar there and laid the wood in order, and bound Isaac his son, and laid him on the altar upon the wood. Now you have to imagine, put yourself even emotionally in Abraham's. What was Abraham thinking while he was tying up Isaac? For that matter, what was Isaac thinking? We talk about the great faith of Abraham, but I think this shows the great faith of Isaac. Isaac was a young man who knew what was going on. And yet he allowed himself to be bound. And then he allowed himself to be placed on the altar. What was Abraham thinking during this time as he takes his son's hand and binds him? As he takes his son and puts him on the altar that for every other time and every other purpose has been used for bloodshed. Now, we know the rest of the story, but Abraham didn't. All he knew is that his God was going to do something. He didn't know what it was, and he didn't know what was going to take place, but he knew God was able to provide whatever it was that was going to happen. He knew God was in control. I wonder today if there's something or someone that we value so much that if God says, though you treasure, I want you to put it on the altar. We go, no, you don't understand, God. This is my puppy. This is my baby. This is my child. This is the one that I love. This is my God. You don't understand the things I've had to do to get this or to this point, or have this child, or raise this child, or see this take place, and now God, you want me to give that up after all the things that's taken place and put it on an altar? Is there anything that we're refusing to offer up to God because we don't know the outcome? See, when I realize this, especially in this passage here, whenever Abraham takes and lays up Isaac on the altar, he doesn't know that God's about to save Isaac. For all intents and purposes, Abraham thinks that he's going to have to kill his son. That's a tall order. I couldn't do it to any of my children. But yet, Abraham, matter of fact, here in a second we read that he was actually about to take the knife and about to come down whenever God stopped him. But I wonder what's in my life. Self-evaluation time. What's in my life? What's in your life that you hold on to so dear that if God says give that up, you go, no, that's too much. You're asking too much of me now, God. I mean, I'll come to church. I mean, I'll help. I'll pay my tithes. I'll give my offerings. I'll help people. But God, this right here, that's my job. That's my living. That's my family. That's my friends. That's my thing. That's my opportunity. You want me to give that up? God, no, I can't do that. That's too personal. Too personal for me, God. But God's a personal God. God doesn't just want part of you. He wants all of you. He wants every bit of you. You say, I can't do that. That's too much from... You're asking too much of me, God. And yet we find here Abraham taking his son, binding him. In verse number 10, and Abraham stretched forth his hand and took the knife to slay his son. For the purpose to kill his son, he had his hand raised. And the angel of the Lord called unto him out of heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham! And he said, Here am I. And he said, Lay not thine hand upon the lad, neither do thou anything unto him. For now I know that thou fearest God, saying, Thou hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, from me. Verse 13, and Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him a ram caught in a thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered him up for a burnt offering in the stead of his son. God did provide himself a ram. Whenever Abraham tells his son, God provided himself a lamb, that is a prophetic statement of Jesus dying on the cross, where John says, Behold the Lamb of God, speaking of Jesus Christ. But in this instance here, God did provide a ram for Abraham, literally in the place of his son Isaac. So I wonder what it is that we hold so dear that we're afraid to give up to God. I think of this, Abraham was one of the wealthiest men in the Bible. All right, he was very wealthy. He had many animals. He had many servants. He had he had his son Isaac and Ishmael, and had these great abundance of wealth. There's a man, A.W. Tozer, who wrote this in a book I was reading called The Pursuit of God. He said, I have said that Abraham possessed nothing, yet was not this poor man rich? Everything he had owned before was his still to enjoy. Sheep, camels, herds, and goods of every sort. He had also his wife and his friends, and best of all, he had his son Isaac safe by his side. He had everything, but he possessed nothing. He had everything, but he possessed nothing. There is the spiritual secret. See, it's not that you have to be poor for God to use you. It's that whatever you have, you need to give it to God, and you realize you possess nothing. What is a steward? We've said it many times before. A steward is simply an overseer, what God's allowing us to have. And Abraham realized this with all of his wealth that he had. He realized, I don't possess it. I'm a steward of it. But I think, what if Abraham was not willing to give up his treasure, his son? Well, then Abraham would have missed a blessing. Keep reading with me just a couple more verses here. Verse number 14. It says that Abraham called the name of that place Jehovah-Jireh, as it is said to this day. By the way, Jehovah Jireh means the Lord will provide. In the mount of the Lord it shall be seen. Verse 15, and the angel of the Lord came unto Abraham out of heaven the second time, and said, by myself have I sworn, saith the Lord, for because thou hast done this thing, and hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, that in blessing I will bless thee, and in multiplying I will multiply thy seed as the stars of the heaven, and as the sand which is upon the seashore, and thy seed shall possess the gate of his enemies. And in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because thou hast obeyed my voice. That is a prophecy of Jesus, who all nations are blessed because of the seed of Abraham, who Jesus is the seed of Abraham, died on the cross, and we are all able to be born again. Verse 19, so Abraham returned unto his young men, and they rose up and went together to Beersheba, and Abraham dwelt at Beersheba. While we are willing to hold on to something because we think it's safe with us, and we don't want to give whatever this thing, this person, this situation, whatever it is, we don't want to give it up to God. Instead, we want to control it. By the way, that shows a lack of faith on our part, because we think, God, I can't give this to you. This is too precious. So what is too precious for us to give to God? What is it that we're clinging to? And when we cling to that, we refuse to give it to God, whatever it may be, you know what we're doing? We're missing a blessing. God wants to bless us. God wants to do good things for us. He wants to be an encouragement. He wants to encourage us to keep going. He wants to give gifts to us. That's the way God works. But we hold on to a treasure and say, God, this is mine. I can't give it up. Therefore, we miss the blessing. Not only this, but let's take a look over to 1 Kings chapter number 17. 1 Kings chapter number 17 this morning. 1 Kings 17. Let's take a look at another treasure. First one was family. You can put that down if you're taking notes. Family. 1 Kings 17 now. Starting at verse number 1. It says, and Elijah the Tishbite, who was of the inhabitants of Gilead, said unto Ahab, as the Lord God of Israel liveth, before whom I stand, there shall not be dew nor rain these years, but according to my word. And the word of the Lord came unto him, saying, get thee hence, and turn thee eastward, and hide thyself by the brook Cherith, that is before Jordan. And it shall be that thou shalt drink of the brook, and I have commanded the ravens to feed thee there. So he went and did according unto the word of the Lord, for he went and dwelt by the brook Cherith, that is before Jordan. And the ravens brought him bread and flesh in the morning, and bread and flesh in the evening, and he drank of the brook. And it came to pass after a while that the brook dried up, because there had been no rain in the land. Verse number 8, and the word of the Lord came unto him, saying, arise, get thee to Zarephath, which belongeth to Zidon, and dwell there. Behold, I have commanded a widow woman there to sustain thee. So he arose and went to Zarephath. And when he came to the gate of the city, behold, the widow woman was there gathering of sticks. And he called to her and said, fetch me, I pray thee, a little water in a vessel, that I may drink. And as she was going to fetch it, he called to her and said, bring me, I pray thee, a morsel of bread in thine hand. And she said, as the Lord thy God liveth, I have not a cake, but an handful of meal in a barrel, and a little oil in a cruse. And behold, I am gathering 2 sticks, that I may go in and dress it for me and my son, that we may eat it and die. So you have in this time of famine, Elijah being sent. There's no water in the brook there by Cherith. So God says, I commanded a widow woman to sustain thee. And God sends his man over here to Zarephath, and this widow is going, and she's collecting these sticks and about to go make her last meal. All she has is just a little bit of meal at the bottom of her barrel. And Elijah says, make me some bread. And she says, what are you talking about, make me some bread? She says, I don't understand what you're saying. She says, I'm just making enough for me and my son. We're going to eat this last meal and we're going to be dead. Because there's no food in the land. There's no water in the land. There's nothing to sustain me and my child. And you want me to go feed you. Notice what Elijah said, verse 13. And Elijah said unto her, Fear not, go and do as thou hast said, but make me therefore a little cake first, and bring it unto me, and after make for thee and for thy son. Wait now, if she's gathering 2 sticks to make enough meal for her and her son, how is she going to make Elijah something and then make some for her and her son? See, she's only got enough to make 2 meals, and he says go make 3 of them. Now, does that math add up to anybody else in here? It doesn't really add up, does it? But he says, you put God first, and God will take care of the others. Right. But this is all I've got. I'm at the bottom of the barrel. I don't have anything else I can give God. I don't have anything. And God says, put me first, and I will take care of you. So, our needs, our personal needs. God doesn't just want our family. But He wants us, when we're at the bottom of our barrel, we have nothing left to give. All we have is just enough energy to do a little bit more for ourselves, to make it to work one more day, to make another paycheck. God says, now I want you to go, and I want you to go help this with the church. I want you to be a part of this function. I want you to go be a witness to somebody. But God, I don't have enough energy. Man, I'm exhausted. But God says, you go do what I tell you first, and I'll give you the energy to do the other. God, I don't have that time. God says, if you give me of your time, I will bless you to where you'll be able to do this. Well, I don't have this ability, but you give God what you can, and God will give you the ability to do this other. The problem is we get so focused on what our own personal needs are. But it's not just one of these blinders like this. It's like holding up a mirror. Well, I can't do anything else. Look at my needs. I've got this, man. I've got this problem. I've got this need. I don't have anything. And we're looking at ourselves the whole time. God says, take the mirror down a little bit and realize that there's other people, and serve me first and let me take care of you. See, the widow goes and she makes this cake for Elijah. And you find that over the next year and a half or so, that God, every morning, she goes in, and what does she find at the bottom of the barrel? Just a little bit more meal for all 3 of them the next day. And then the next day. And then the next day. And God supplies her needs. Why? Because of what she did when she put God's man first. When she put God first. And she took care of the man that God said, here, I've commanded this woman to take care of you. Now, what if she would have said, no, I don't have enough for you. I can't. I mean, it's my last supper. You know what would have happened to her and her son? They would have died. So not only do we hurt ourselves and miss a blessing when we hold on to our treasures, but in reality, it can be something that would kill us, maybe spiritually, as far as we become seared with a hot iron. I tell you what, I just can't. I can't read. And it destroys us. That's just too much. Because we get so focused on ourselves that we forget that God says, if you will give to me first, then I will take care of you. You're my child. You're my child. And I promise you, God says, if you will provide for me, if you will give to me, not provide for me, if you will give to me that you have, I will provide for you. See, what this is a growing of faith. This is what God wants us to do. He wants us to grow in our faith. He wants us to not just give Him out of the abundance of what we have. Well, I think I have an extra car, so yeah, the missionary can use it. What if it's the last vehicle you have? Well, what if the missionary's vehicle broke down? Well, I'll tell you what, too bad for them. I don't really have anything, and I just call someone else. But God may be telling you, let the missionary use that vehicle. Are you kidding me? You know what the insurance is? You know what this is? But what if God says, give this, and that I will provide your needs? That's the way God works. We get so focused on just ourselves and our own needs that we not only say, God, this is my family, this is my thing, I can't give this to you, we lose a blessing. But we say, God, no, this is the last I've got. I've got to hold on to this for all my might. And in doing that, we end up. Not only does this affect this widow woman, it affects her son. Okay, she was a widow woman and she had a child she would take care of. And in those days, women didn't work. That's just the way it was. So she had no other income. She couldn't go find another. So when she literally has no other source of income. She has no other source of sustaining food, of getting anything. And yet God says, give that to me. And when she does, God blesses her. She gave everything she had. Take a look over quickly at John chapter number 6. John chapter number 6. Starting at verse number 1. John chapter 6, verse 1. After these things, Jesus went over the Sea of Galilee, which is the Sea of Tiberias, and a great multitude followed him, because they saw his miracles, which he did on them that were diseased. And Jesus went up into a mountain, and there he sat with his disciples, and the Passover, a feast of the Jews, was nigh. Verse number 5, when Jesus had lifted up his eyes and saw a great company come unto him, he said unto Philip, whence shall we buy bread that these may eat? And this he said. Why did he ask Philip this question? Because he didn't know what he was going to do? Because he didn't know how he was going to feed these people? No, the Bible tells us. This he said to prove him. In other words, to show Philip, he's going to put him in the right mindset to see God do great things. For he himself knew what he would do. Philip answered him, 200 penny worth of bread is not sufficient for them. See, he's thinking the way that we do. You see these thousands of people, God says, how are we going to provide for them? That's going to take a lot of money. That's what you don't understand. You're talking about, I don't care if you just give them, just a little bit of whatever. You give them all cereal, it's still going to cost a lot of money, God. That's a lot. And he says that every one of them may take a little. God, we're just going to have enough just to give them just a little bit. A lot of money is going to be just a little bit. You got several thousand people here, God. This is too much. Philip is becoming overwhelmed. You ever become overwhelmed in a situation saying, God, this is just way, man, this is too much. How are you going to take care of this? Notice here, verse number 8, one of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, saith unto him, there is a lad here. A lad is a young man, a child. There is a lad here which hath 5 barley loaves and 2 small fishes. Notice, 5 barley loaves and 2 small fishes. So you're not talking about like the catch of the day. Like, ooh, this is awesome. 2 small. This is young boy. Enough for him. All right, to sustain one young man. But what are they among so many? God, I don't have a lot. I don't have hardly any. I don't have any talents. I don't have a lot of this. I don't have a lot of that. But I tell you, this young man, he treasured his food. Nobody else had food. Evidently, nobody else had any food with him because they were all hungry. And evidently, this young man, wherever he came from, his mom or his dad or somebody had packed him a lunch and said, take this with you. And here he is. Nobody else has food. And he says, I have, at least this young man has a treasure. He has something that everybody else needs. And that's his lunch. Notice what Jesus does, though. It says, and Jesus said, make the men sit down. Now, there was much grass in the place, so the men sat down in number about, how many? 5,000. You're not talking about just a couple. All right, you got to understand. Small fish and 5 barley loaves, not much bigger, okay? And Jesus says, all right, you have all 5,000 of the men sit down. This is including the women and the children. Some Bible scholars believe that there's upwards to 20,000 people there at this particular point. So you're looking literally at a field that's covered with people. Thousands of people. And God says here, Jesus says, have them sit down. And I don't have one of those little lunch, we had a little lunch bag we were putting some stuff in yesterday. But, these little brown bags, little brown bags. My mom used to make these little sandwiches and put in a little brown bag. She wrapped it in. I go, going off to school. All right, and that's what this little boy had. This is a little bitty brown bag. And God says, Jesus says, no other food. Have everybody sit down and bring that lunch. Now, I can't imagine what the apostles are thinking. But see, this young man, when the apostles come to him, he has a choice. Now see, the apostle says, what are these 2 small fish and this 5 barley loaves amongst so many? And they go to the challenge and say, hey, the master needs this food because he's going to feed everybody. You ever heard about the faith of a child? I think that child had more faith than some of his apostles because he gave it. But he had a choice. Nobody else had food. He had a treasure. He had something that everybody else needed, everybody desired. It was a treasure of his. It wasn't much, but it was still a treasure. It was still something valued. And he's willing to give it. So he gives it to Jesus, and what does he do? He blesses it, and he feeds the 5,000 men, up to 20,000 people. So they go, I don't know exactly how he did it, but he break the bread. I don't know if he gave to each one as he's breaking this little piece of bread off to each disciple. Says here, now you go start letting them take. And everybody, you find out they don't just get a little morsel. Remember, Philip said 220 worth, that's just going to give everybody just a little bit. But what did Jesus do? He gave them and let them eat to their full. He gave them a buffet. All you can eat buffet from Jesus. Alright, fish and bread. You can have all you eat. And not only that, but of these little fish and these 5 loaves, there are 12 baskets full left over. I find that interesting because how many apostles did Jesus have? 12. So 1 basket per apostle. Do you think that grew their faith? I think it did. Then you find later on he feeds 4,000, same type of situation. But you see, we focus now on that young man who had not much, but he had a treasure, and he was willing to give it. What did that young boy, what did that young man said? God, I mean, that's all I got. I just need to eat it for myself and go back home, and maybe we can figure something else. I mean, not many children are just going, yeah, here, sure. Yeah. If they're hungry, I need this. You know, I want this. And so, what if he would have refused to give his lunch? This is a treasure that he gave. Now see, we hear these stories preached and taught on about what happens when they give, but I'm trying to look at it the other way. What if they hadn't? Yeah. See, they all had treasures. Abraham had Isaac. The widow had just a little bit of meal. And here, this young man just has a little bit of food. And God does a great thing. Jesus does the miraculous. So because he gave of his treasure, he was able to see God do a miracle. And he was able to see God increase the faith of his 12 apostles. That's right. But now what if he wouldn't have given that? Then his 12 apostles they would have been able to figure something. They would all have been sent home hungry. The apostles wouldn't have been able to witness the 12 loaves of bread at that point. Their faith would have been increased even that much more, because this young man would have possibly, what if he would have said, no, I can't, this is too valuable to me. There's one more treasure I think about. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. You see, God doesn't require us to give our treasure just because. See, he set an example. He gave his treasure. His only begotten Son. God gave his Son to become sin for us. For 2 Corinthians chapter 5, 17 through 21, you find where it says he became sin for us. Is that a treasure? Is Jesus a treasure? Yes. He is. He is. But what if God had not given his Son for us? You ever thought about that? Well, we'd have no hope of heaven. Romans 3:23, for all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. The wages of sin is death. We're all sinners. We're all going to hell. And had Jesus not come, there would not be a way to heaven. Because God is sinless. He's perfect. He's righteous. He's holy. He cannot nor will he allow sin in his presence. And had there not been God who come in flesh named Jesus to die on the cross and take my sins upon him and become sin for me, I would be lost, and so would you, without any hope of heaven. So the Bible tells us that those who believe in God is not condemned, but those who do not believe are condemned already. So we would all be condemned had Jesus not come. God doesn't, when we hear lessons or sermons preached about giving of our treasure, sometimes we get so on the defense, go, I can't do that. God's asking too much of me. He's not asking any more of you than what He Himself is willing to give. We need to be willing to give of our treasure. Each one of us, I would dare say that each one of us has something in us that we hold so dear that it's so hard to let God have control of that. It's a treasure that we go, Lord, I don't know. That's taking it awfully personal. And yet, if we would just let God have whatever that treasure is that we value so much that it's hard for us to let God have it, if we let go of that and give it to God, we would see God do great things. But we're going to miss out on God's blessings. We're going to miss out on seeing other people blessed because of that treasure we've given to God. We're going to miss out on all of these things if we just say, I can't. I can't. And God looks at you and says, but I given everything for you. I gave you my Son. A treasure of all treasures. To die on the cross for our sins. 1 Corinthians 15:17 says this, and if Christ be not raised, your faith is vain, ye are yet in your sins. But I'm thankful that God did give His treasure, Jesus Christ, for our sins. I'm thankful that not only did He give, but that we're all able to be beneficiaries of God's gift, of a giving God, who gave His only begotten Son to die in our place. So the question that I want to ask this morning in closing is this. What am I, or what are you holding on to that is so important that I just won't give it up? What is it? Who is it? We're holding on to so much we can't let go of it. I treasure that too much. I treasure this idea, this philosophy, this way of thinking. Whatever this treasure is, God may be telling you, you need to give this up. It may be a habit. It may be a family member. It may be a friend. It may be a position. I treasure that too much. God may be asking you to give something up. And you go, I can't. But if you would give that up, you would find that God would be able to use you and use that treasure much more effectively than you ever could. I guess the better question is this. What are you not willing to trust God with? Because you're not giving God your treasure. That means, simply put, you're not trusting Him. You think you can control it better than God can. You think you can take care of that person better than God can. Matter of fact, I think of this in Pursuit of God from A.W. Tozer. One more quote from him. It says, we are often hindered from giving up our treasures to the Lord out of fear for their safety. This is especially true when those treasures are loved relatives and friends. But we need have no such fears. Our Lord came not to destroy, but to save. Everything is safe which we commit to Him. And nothing is really safe which is not so committed. That's right. Well, I want to keep this person safe. I want to keep this thing safe. Then give it to God. But I feel safe in this way of thinking. You need to give it to God. So what are you holding on to? Maybe there's somebody who's watching maybe on YouTube or Facebook or something, and you've not given God yourself, your soul. You've not committed your soul to God. I wonder, maybe you're in here, and you've never received Jesus as your personal Savior. He gave His Son so you don't have to go to a real hell. Oh, it's real. Because Jesus is God, and Jesus described hell, and Jesus cannot lie. Hell is real. It's hot. So I wonder if there's anybody in here today that says, I'll get saved eventually. Remember time? We talked about that a few weeks ago. You never know when it's going to be done. That's right. The Bible says today is the day of salvation. Don't put it off till tomorrow, because you may not make it tomorrow. What you need to do today, if you're lost. If you've never received Jesus, today is the day to get that settled. But Christian, God gave everything for you. But what have you given to Him? Well, I come to church Sunday morning. I come to Sunday school. I go to Wednesday night service, Sunday night service. I go to one service a week, or I help somebody out every so often. No, what have you given to God? Not what are you giving of your excess. Well, I have an extra hour, so I think I can go to church today. I have an extra couple dollars, so I think I can maybe help a missionary out. I have an extra couple of this, so I think I can maybe be a blessing to somebody now because I have a little extra. See, that's just skimming off the top and giving God just take my leftovers. That's not giving. That's feeding a pig. Right? You give your pig leftovers. What are you giving? Your first fruits. Your best. Bow your heads and close your eyes this morning.